Hey, it's Mazzy, and welcome to The Resistance. This is going to be a new series, I hope, and I'm going to bring on a couple guests here. These are friends of mine. Originally, this was planned with four people this time. One of my friends and guests, John, the digital gramophone, we think ICE raided his house, and he's in a detention camp now. There is some political discussions in here, so if politics turn you off, please move on. There are plenty of videos that all of us collectively make that are non-political, but it's centered around music. And it's going to be about the music. And hopefully, this will be a series like when I used to have the Four Corners with some other people and a few other things. So, this is Welcome to the Resistance #1, the first one. So, I'm going to bring in the guests here, Todd and Chris. You're here.
Good.
Yes. There'll be links to their channels. They're all content creators within the vinyl community. There's the Long Cut. Is that right?
That is right. Thank you, Mazzy.
Chris, the Long Cut. He's in the Bay Area. There's Todd, the
Plural.
Lost Mixtape,
Plural.
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 And he's just south of Seattle here. And I've known Chris almost 20 years. Uh,
Yeah.
and I've known Todd about 3 years, give or take, or so. So anyway, welcome. So we're going to just go around showing records. I usually don't start out, but I'm going to show the first one only because I think it'll set a tone. And I have no idea what you guys are showing, but I think this record has influenced a lot of the artists that we all talk about and like a lot. And it's going back to 1940. These was originally released. This was originally released on a double 278s, volume one and volume two. And he's very typical now because he's a character in one of the big movies going around America, and that's Woody Guthrie's Dust Bowl Ballads. Again, originally came out on 78. RCA refused to put it out in 1960 when Woody Guthrie wanted to, so Smithsonian Folkways put it out in this version on LP. It's really influenced by Steinbeck's Grapes of Wrath, and of course the movie with Henry Fonda, who played Tom Joad in that. And Tom Joad is probably a part of, I don't know if you guys are showing that at all this time, but we could talk about that as we discuss these records. And the Dust Bowl, obviously, this is during the Depression, 1930s. And I think we've experienced in our lifetime a certain thing of banks collapsing back in, what is it, 2008, 2009. And there's a lot of disparity and the rich are richer, the poor are poor, the middle class get fucked most of the time in so many ways. And I think this is topical as ever. Probably one of the first concept records ever. And it's a wonderful record to pick up with this beautiful. Tried to look this up. This is not a Dorothea Lange photograph, but she did a lot of those classic photographs during the Dust Bowl. So I just wanted to show this because we all know how he influenced Woody Guthrie and Bruce Springsteen. I mean, a whole thing. This was again reissued in 1960s when the folk revival in America was happening. So it's just a great, great album. And what's great about these records, the Folkways records, they always came with these books, and there's a whole essay by Woody Guthrie. I think you can still get reissues of this.
I
Uh,
have it. Yeah. And I
yeah,
got it not too long ago.
it's a rec and the lyrics things. It's an important record, and so I think that sets the tone for me of what how I see my contribution to this particular video.
Missed
I
your missed your intro, Mazzy, a little. We didn't see it live. Just curious how you set this up.
Well, I said that welcome to the resistance. I'm
Okay.
surprised you didn't say
Okay.
that. This is going to be first in a hopeful a series. I mentioned usually there's going to be four of us. That the digital gramophone John couldn't make it today because he's getting deported, we think, but we don't know. He may show up today, if not in a future episode. And gave people warning there may be some political discussion here. So
Okay.
if
Okay.
you're not into that, please turn the channel because all of our videos, most of the time, they're not political at all about music. I am one that feels all music is political to some extent. It could be personally political with relationships and things, but every band that I love has gone in and out of politics on one form or another.
I can do uh Todd, if you're okay with it, if I go next, just because there's a
Yeah, yeah,
tie-in right to
sure,
Woody Guthrie.
absolutely. A quick
Um,
question on that Woody Guthrie. Is that kind of like the Woody Guthrie record if you're only going to get one? Is that the one to get?
I think this is the one to get. I think this is the one to get. There are comps and, with CD comps and stuff. First of all, I mean, how can you
Cover's
not
amazing.
love this cover, right?
Yeah, yeah.
It's just a beautiful Dust Bowl ballad sung by Woody Guthrie, Folkways Records.
Okay.
Uh, and it's thematic and it's him and acoustic guitar. And you hear where Bob Dylan got his early sound, definitely, right in here. And even Bruce in, Nebraska and Tom Joad and those type of things. So definitely,
I'm gonna play that today. It's a
yeah.
great one. Um, Speaking of Woody Guthrie, the first record that I grabbed, and it has just recently, in the last 10 days, well, a lot has happened in the last 10 days. So, um, like many of us searching for some music or some books or essays in this time, and the first record I went to, which surprised me, is this Sunvolt record called Union. Um, Came out in 2019. The Woody Guthrie connection is obviously Jay Farrar, the lead guy from Sunvolt, who was obviously the co-lead of Uncle Tupelo as well. Jay Farrar did do, similar to how Jeff Tweedy did the Mermaid Avenue records, Farrar did a Woody Guthrie record as well, with Jim James from My Morning Jacket, Anders Parker from Varnaline, and I think Will Johnson from Central Matic. Will Johnson's also in Jason Isbell's band now. But I've listened to this record probably 6 times in the last week, and it's been when I've been out walking. I don't know why. It's like I typically I'll get to Dylan at some point, but I during these times I typically turn to Dylan. But the first few tracks, first song's called While Rome Burns, which is basically about what's going on right now. Second track is called The 99. It's referring to the 99% of us. Then Devil May Care. He has a song called uh, Reality Winner, which I don't know that story. She was Reality Winner was. Do you know Mazzy? She was. Um, I think she spilled the beans on some stuff and she went to prison. I think her name was Reality Winner. I don't know if that was like her
Well, that's
code
her
name.
real name. Oh,
I think so. Yeah.
I didn't know if that was. I don't know.
Yeah.
Off the top of my head, I don't know that story, but that sounds like a story that's happened many times. Or
Yeah, yeah. But I'll just say this record, it's when people talk about Jay Farrar, they talk about Trace, the first Sunvolt record from '95, which is absolutely brilliant. Obviously, the four Uncle Tupelo records are some of my favorite records of all time. No Depression, his first record with Jeff Tweedy, it's all about America and sort of the things we're going through for the last 30 years. But this one's a surprise. If you're a fan of that music, people don't talk about this record a lot, but Union, especially during these times, Jay Farrar, I mean, it's only 6 years ago. And he obviously wrote this during the first administration of the gentleman who is now presiding over this country. But it's a tremendous record. And Mazzy, I think you'd love it. Todd, have you heard this one? I know you're on the Wilco, Uncle Tupelo.
I am, but I started to be honest, lose a little interest in Farrar
Oh,
as
really?
years went on. Yeah. I don't know that I've heard that one. Was that what year that come out?
I'm looking at 2019, and
No, I haven't heard that one. I think the last one I heard was shoot, I can't remember. But no, the first couple Sunvolt records when they reunited after his solo stuff, I kind of
yeah,
got into,
yeah.
but I really haven't listened to the last several or
I mean,
probably
it's
since then.
jacket's beautiful, all black and
Oh
white, very
wow.
Sunvolt
Nice.
Americana stuff. Check it out. I don't
is
think
it
a lot of
still
people know this
available
record.
on vinyl? Is it still easily available on vinyl?
I think it is, yeah. Um, it's sort of, I was reaching my friends in New York in the last week, right? We're all talking to close friends, family during all this. And I brought this up, and my buddy Scott was like, I was just listening to it. He's like, I was
Oh
walking
wow.
through Central Park listening to Union. And I was like, man, awesome. So check it out. Good
I'm
record.
definitely going to now.
This whole concept started because of a text thread the three of us or four of us were on about what's happening, what's going on, United States especially, and the world to some extent. So that's kind of the genesis of how we got this together. And then we argued for a week about it, how format. And
I imagine
I had to
everyone
play
in Amer I imagine everyone in America, if not everyone in the world, is on those text threads with family, friends,
exactly.
right? We're all
I
on it.
think I'm the Tweety, not to say I'm more talented or anything else, but the guy that pushing the concept and on these things. So,
Good analogy. It's a good analogy.
right. Okay.
Yeah,
I don't mind being that,
yeah, yeah.
All right,
Todd.
I guess maybe I'm John Surratt or something. But
You sort of have a Strahd vibe. I could say that.
we'll get into this more, I think. But for me, it's been pure escapism. It's been pure like listen to something that has nothing to do with kind of what's going on because frankly, I can't handle it half the time. But I do, since we're on this kind of subject, I did pick and I have other picks too, but related primarily to what you two just shared, I do want to talk about an artist, a band that I think is just so important for these times as a chronicler um of what's been going on in the last 10 years ish, if not more. And that is the Drive-By Truckers. They have a trilogy of records starting with American Band from 2016, came out actually before that presidential election. And it seems like a preview for everything that's coming. For the first time, they didn't use their art director, Wes Freed. Instead, they decided to go for a photo, and it's a very powerful photo. They get into police brutality with a song like What It Means, just will completely slay you if you listen to it. And Ever South, you can't seem to get away from their southern accent and what that might mean to people. Songs like Darkened Flags on the Cusp of Dawn, an immigrant song called Raymond Cassiano, talking about dealing with border police going way back. The whole album is kind of like that. And once they banned Imagine, talking about how radio bans after 9/11, when they started banning the song Imagine, saying that you can't play the song Imagine. So it's an incredibly powerful record. I also want to briefly touch on really a trilogy of records they did. So started out with American Band, then it went to The Unraveling. Um, Armageddon's Back in Town, Thoughts and Prayers. It's as on the nose as it sounds. 21st Century USA, Babies in Cages, uh, another very powerful record. And then the third one in this trilogy, you know, Black Lives Matter on the top, using Wes Freed's artwork again, is called The New Okay, almost like a surrender. Well, this is The New Okay. And that's the first song on here. It's a little less political than the others, but it ends with the Ramones cover. Well, actually, a song before that, Watching the Orange Clouds, is about kind of fires and devastation going on in Portland, Oregon, smoke being the air being very smoky, as we can all relate to. And then it ends with the song "The KKK Took My Baby Away," Ramones cover. So just want to touch on that band. I think that I don't think there's a single band that has documented our times, at least from a rock and roll perspective, quite the way that the Drive-By Truckers have recently.
That was really good. You came prepared, man.
He did the homework. Do
Right?
the
That was
work. Do
good.
the rehearsal. Okay, I'm going to talk about, first of all, what's happening in the whole country is so obviously in terms of this administration, the majority of people who voted for the person. But I want to talk about bring it home to us. The three of us have lived on the West Coast for some time, and all of us lives in California. I'm a big fan of California. It has its problems like in other states, but I want to talk about immigration here because what's going on right now is atrocious. Now, over the last 20, 25, 30 years, we've had chances to do immigration reform. Even George Bush, under his administration with Dreamers, had a plan, and a small segment on the right nixed that, and it didn't happen. Obama tried it. Obviously, there was a plan, it was a compromise. And whenever I get on streams or I get on debates of these things, people say, yeah, but you had to give away this. It was a compromise, a starting plan for something to help on the border. Now, my father was an immigrant. My father came from Yugoslavia when he was 11 years old to the Bay Area. he was a legal immigrant. I know people say, yeah, but my parents did it legally and stuff. And it's more problematic because there's no great policy of American immigration, of immigration from anywhere. Obviously, with the tech world, we're letting, a certain segment of people who can work in tech in, but we don't have something with the workers. Now, what happened in Los Angeles, this massive fire that is bigger than the area of Manhattan, San Francisco, all these places is atrocious now. What's happening now, some people are getting rounded up. We don't know the extent of it, and they're going to be deported. But what's going to happen is LA is going to need to be rebuilt. Who are the people going to help rebuild it? Now, on every construction site, all the farm working, a lot of these people are migrants, and they're not all legal. So that's just the fact. So we're going to need able bodies that want to do the work. It's not like these people are taking away American jobs who want to, bring the lumber in. Obviously, there's a lot of contractors that are going to get work from across the country to rebuild LA. I know I'm doing a long intro, but I want to bring about a record that, like, it's celebrating its 20th anniversary this year. And it's the first of a trilogy of concept records by Ry Cooder. And this is called Chavez Ravine. And Chavez Ravine came out in 2005. And it's the story of a Chicano area in Los Angeles, Chavez Ravine, which was, kind of a shanty town but the families, all kinds of families lived there. And through eminent domain, LA came in, we're going to tear it down and put low cost housing and replace them, supposedly housing for people like the people who were living there initially. That never happened. And then, of course, if you know the history, the Brooklyn Dodgers moved and they built Dodger Stadium in Chavez Ravine. Ry Cooder does this brilliant record. It's a mix of Chicano, there's Latin singers, Latin musicians, some that go back from the 50s and early 60s that play with him, sing in Spanish. There's jazz, there's stories about UFOs. It's really an interesting storytelling record. Nonsuch finally put out the vinyl several years ago, about 5 years ago, but it talks about that area. There's a whole booklet of when they're bulldozing that area. And then, instead of, they basically did a bait and switch. Instead of having, these beautiful like houses and uh, revitalizing the area for low income and middle class, mostly low income immigrants and others, it was bulldozed in Dodger Stadium. Now, being a Giants fan, I always like to dump on the Dodgers. I don't blame them specifically for this, especially the Dodgers now, but it's an atrocious thing that happened in America and in Los Angeles. And I think all this stuff, this really is topical in terms of what's happening. We're going to have to, we as, Californians, West Coast, Oregon, Washington, they're going to have to rebuild Los Angeles. And it's going to be something that's going to take the next decade or more, I would think. And it'll never be the same as it was. And, there's always someone's going to blame, oh, the fire hydrants didn't have enough water. And those of you who've been to LA, I know, Chris, you work in LA quite a bit. Your job is based there, but you go back and forth.
I'm going on Monday.
Yeah, there. And I've been LA, hundreds and hundreds of times. And I know those Santa Ana winds, and I know the things, no matter how much fucking water that what you would have had that would have put out the fires this time. And and that's where we can get into, if we want climate change and the things that are happening with the floods, and look at the snows now in Alabama and Florida. I believe in that science, and this is a whole thing. Immigration, climate change. There's all these problems that we're having, and we can solve them, but it takes a lot of work. And I think, America is a great country, but I personally think the leadership is really doing a negative direction on people, and just, that you talked about locking people in cages, breaking up families, whether legal or otherwise. And some people are legal are being caught, we've heard. And who's gonna pick these farms? And what, 11% of 13% of the agriculture in America is grown in California.
Yeah. guess it's my turn. A lot
I
of
definitely
segue from that.
want to
Can we
check
have a little
the
fun?
record.
Maslov, can we smile a little bit?
There was a lot there. A lot
There
to,
was.
lot
I
to
know,
embrace.
I know.
Um,
I can't wait to read the comments on this video.
yeah. I mean, yeah, obviously I haven't been back to LA since I was supposed to go. What started on a Tuesday afternoon, right? A Tuesday morning, I think, at like
Yeah.
10:30 in the morning. I think I was supposed to go I was supposed to go the following Monday. Had to postpone it. And I'm planning on going on Monday. But again, with LA right now, I think everything is sort of tentative, right? Like it sounds, and it's supposed to rain, I think, today.
Oh,
But
good.
now, yeah, but they're worried about mudslides and floods. So it's just,
Yeah, you can't win.
they cannot get a break.
And we
Yeah.
all know, I mean, we all know firsthand people have lost their houses,
I know,
or businesses. Yeah. Yeah.
I know a number of people who have
Yeah, me
lost their
too. Me
homes.
too.
I know people who multiple generations of their family lost their homes, including themselves. So themselves, their parents, up to their grandparents. Like the scale of this is we haven't even touched it yet, right?
Exactly.
So it's still happening. But for my second record, I mean, I think when you're talking about America, this is an obvious one, right? Nebraska. Um, and I think for the times, it's more complicated, this record right now than it would have been, say, during like the Reagan years when he wrote this, right? I think he wrote it. Yeah, he wrote it. This came out in 82.
Do yeah.
82, yeah. Um, there's arguments that this is Springsteen's best record. I think anything from 73 to 87, excluding Greetings from Asbury Park, could be Bruce Springsteen's greatest record. Wildly Innocent through Tunnel of Love. Tunnel of Love is probably the Springsteen record I listen to the most, and I've never been divorced, but I still love it so much.
You don't like Blinded by the Light?
I like no, and the Spirit in the Night's great. Does This Bus Stop is great. Uh, but it's not a perfect record. I think every other record, Wild the Innocent through Tunnel of Love, those are perfect records. But
What's the new Dylan album? That was the new Dylan. That's when he was the new Dylan.
with Wild the Innocent,
Yeah. Oh,
yeah,
this
yeah,
is the next Dylan, or wouldn't?
yeah, yeah, yeah. So was Steve Forbert. So
Yeah.
was
Oh, yeah. There's a lot.
Josh Ritter.
Fine.
Right? There's a million next Dylans. But I mean, most people who are watching this channel have probably heard this record. They know the story behind the record. He wrote it in his bedroom, I believe. Just a tremendous story, right? It was right after and Mazzy, you probably have a better history on this, but right after The River came out and he exploded, right? He had a huge hit with Hungry Heart, which he wrote that for the Ramones, is that right? And then he decided to keep it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think either he wasn't presented or the Ramones weren't interested.
Imagine the Ramones doing Hungry Heart. Like,
It kind
what?
of works though if you listen to it,
Yeah, it does, sort of.
I
It
don't
does.
know. Yeah.
And it's
And
got
apparently,
Fluorescent Leach and Eddie. Flo and Eddie are
Flo and Eddie, yeah, I remember them.
Howard
So,
Kalen, Mark Volan, or the
I've
back to
never
back.
talked about Flo and Eddie, and then the last like couple times we've been together, we talked about Flo
Yeah.
and Eddie.
I mean, they were on
From the
W.
they were the original Turtles, and
Yep.
then they were in Frank Zappa, the 71 Fillmore,
That's funny. I
The
only
Mud
know
Shark.
them as I think they had a radio show in New York when I was growing up on
Could be.
WNEW.
Could be.
I didn't know they were in bands. That's
Oh,
funny.
the Turtles, Happy Together.
Yeah, yeah, I know. I know. I just didn't know they were members.
And the
Um,
Mothers.
yeah. What's the name of that band? Say it again.
Frank Zappa and the Mothers, the
Oh,
Turtles.
yeah, yeah,
The
yeah.
Mothers, especially the live 71, where Zappa talks about the Mud Shark, which brings us back to Seattle, the Edgewater Hotel, where the band, I think it was either Vanilla Fudge or Led Zeppelin, were having sex with a groupie, and
That
a
would
mud
be Led
shark
Zeppelin.
they
Yeah.
caught. Was it Led Zeppelin? I keep hearing back and
The
forth.
story, yeah, it's like a rumor, but yeah,
It's a
been
I don't
great
handled.
know the
story.
stories at
The
all.
Mud Shark. Buy that record.
Yeah. But last sort of, everyone knows, or I think most people know, there's a movie being made with the guy from The Bear. What's his name? I always forget his name.
Jeremy Allen White, I think.
Yeah, yeah. So I think that's in production right now, and apparently Springsteen's been showing up and like getting bagels and coffee for people. I've seen picture. It just
That would be intimidating. I think, like Dylan didn't show up on the Dylan thing.
yeah, but I think Bruce is different than Dylan, right? Bruce is
Do you,
like such a kind, like Dylan's Dylan's tough, right? Like
Dylan apparently did a complete read through of himself of that script with the guys.
Yeah.
So
and Timothy Chalamet is on Saturday Night Live tonight as
you want to watch that?
the
I'm
host and the
impressed with
performer.
it. Yeah.
But one last thing before I jump,
Last
because I
night,
grabbed.
this is debuting on Sunday, so you could probably watch it on YouTube.
Oh yeah, good
Yeah.
call. I just want to show this. This is a Springsteen record of hope that I listened to, and I remember when our previous president, our president prior to our current president, won, and I was, I was very happy. I remember I went for a walk on that day in November of, was that November 9th of 19? Yeah, or 20?
20.
20,
You would have started at 20.
Yeah. And I remember I went for a walk and played Chimes of Freedom. And I started bawling. Like
Yeah.
that's what music does, right? It just absolutely cut through me. I felt like very proud of my country and Chimes of Freedom, which what Dylan wrote Chimes of Freedom, right?
Yeah, but the Birds had a huge hit on it.
Yeah. But I don't know if you have you heard this, like Springsteen's version of this? It's fantastic.
It is good.
I don't know that I've ever heard that.
It's an EP. Yeah, it's
Yeah,
great.
there's a Born to Run acoustic version, which is great, and then Tougher Than the Rest from Tunnel of Love and Be True, which I think was on Tracks. Be True is a phenomenal song. So this is an upbeat sort of Nebraska sort of makes you think about the American middle class and struggles of many people in this country. Springsteen also, that guy can cover everything, right? He can make you feel proud. He can make you feel a little bit despondent. He can make you feel everything in between. So, Chimes of Freedom, if you're looking to feel a little upbeat about where we may be in a few years, or once this chapter is hopefully over, Chimes of Freedom by anyone, right? The Byrds, Dylan, Springsteen. It'll hopefully do a little bit of what it does to me, which is make me still proud of this country despite all of our faults.
I don't know. I'm not going to speak for Todd either, but I'm proud of this country. I love this. And it reminds me, I'm old. I'm like a generation at least. Like I'm 20 years-ish, not quite, maybe older than the two of you. And I was like the last year that they picked the lottery for the Vietnam War draft. Luckily, they hadn't picked 2 years earlier, and I was not a high number. And I was planning to go to Canada, whatever people think, because that war was bad. And the worst thing about that, when people were protesting, I was involved in the 71 moratorium in Golden Gate Park, an anti-war thing with all, great speakers and music, the usual, anti-war thing. It sounds like a cliche now, but you'd hear these people say, if you don't like, love it or leave it, love it or America. Well, obviously, looking back on it, we love America, but we don't like the policies that at the time the government, the Vietnam War, what was happening. Looking back on it, it turned out we were right about that war. And unfortunately, the veterans that came back were treated like shit. They were treated like crap for the most part, not from us, but from the government and from a lot of people. And, that still happens occasionally. We talk about the guy now who just degrades people in the military and, people who lost or were captured and who were killed that like they're not even worth it, which is really, yet people still applaud, that thing. Do you feel like crazy sometimes where like are people hearing the same thing you're hearing?
I mean,
It doesn't exist anymore.
I mean, it's the cops, right? New York Times finally wrote an article, I think it was yesterday, where the headline was Trump supports the blue as long as they support him. And I was like, finally, big media is talking, like, really? Like, we haven't known that for, I was raised by a police officer. My stepfather was a police officer. And there's a million stories I could tell there. A great man died about 4 years ago. Somebody I love dearly and was great to my brother and me after my parents separated. Sorry, getting very personal here. But it's probably because I was just a Nebraska state trooper.
Well, you do. I hope people who are watching this who don't know Chris and Todd, there are links to their channels. Chris really tells his story a lot, and personal story. His brother he lost several years ago, and about mental health issues in the world and music and other things. And this is we're trying to like be serious. Yeah, we're gonna have fun with this, but this is why I gravitate to both your channels and both of you as friends. And we don't hang out a lot, but we do kind of correspond, not just politically, it's musically. We have fun, and I tease you guys about all the Wilco shit all the time. And I'm a Wilco fan, but I'm not as immersed. I mean, it's a generational thing too about that. So I
Yeah, we
applaud you talking about your personal journey.
thank you. I mean, we recently in one of your previous videos, right? We all met up uh, in Seattle, and I mean this or outside of Seattle. This during these times, those meetings, for at least for me, I mean, I've thought about that. We spent what a day and a half, 2 days together, drinking, telling stories, listening to records. Went to some record shops. We went out to dinner. I've thought about that almost every day since because I'm like,
Yeah,
this is the stuff like nothing matters more than that right now, right? Like you're keeping your voice around the things going on in this country and this world, but also seeing the people that you care about. And I don't know. It's it was a wonderful time. Todd, you
I
were a
hope
great
this
host.
series, I hope this series, I'm calling it The Resistance for obvious reasons, continues and that we're trying to be reasonable in how we discuss this. We're not like the people that will call us deranged, ex-deranged syndrome or whatever it is. We're trying to be realistic about what's going on. And I'm for compromise myself. And I think a lot of people are not, but there are a lot of people that are and are tired of the bullshit.
yeah, I agree.
All right, Todd.
Yeah. Yeah, I think community matters more than anything these days. I think the arts matter, music matters, all of that. Because we do know that Satan is real, if we've learned anything.
That's a
But
great
I want to
record. That's
show
a
an
great
artist.
record.
Yeah. I want to show an artist that is just a classic, timeless artist. For me, I know when we were discussing what to do with this video in the thread, I was saying, like, for me, it's kind of escapism. It's like, I guess I mentioned this earlier too. I have a hard time, although I mentioned some records and I might mention another one that are very political. I've had a hard time personally listening to that stuff since November. But I will listen to Willie Nelson and I will listen to, I think it's hard to find a better American voice than Willie Nelson that probably spans generations and ideologies too. You can be a very conservative person and listen to Willie Nelson, even though we know Willie Nelson smokes pot and is quite a liberal man. The stories he tells, the voice, just his voice, just hearing his voice, um, can take me to another place where I forget about all this stuff, which is I don't want to forget about it when it comes time to vote and to be active and support things and stand up for my neighbors. But I don't like, I used to be such a news junkie, such a political junkie. And my plan is to not be that way. I want to be well informed. I don't want to be living this stuff 24/7 anymore. I just can't. I also wanted to just mention, since I'm mentioning Willie Nelson, this album, for anybody that doesn't know it, is
I
such
love it. Love it.
profound, great Willie Nelson record from, I want to say like
Maybe 12 years ago, 15 years, 20 years ago, maybe?
96. Yeah, about
Long
20.
time ago, 30.
It's just him and his guitar.
Isn't it
And
amazing how like
Robbie's
you
on
think it's
here.
15 years ago and it's 30 years
Oh,
almost?
I know. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. But
It's a
such
great
a
record.
great record, just totally stripped down.
And I
Yeah,
love that cover. The
I do
cover photo
too.
is
It's
great.
Yeah.
down the borderline on that.
That's the album after this, I think, or the one
Okay,
before it.
because I'm going to talk about that later, maybe,
And
so.
I've talked about this, and Mazzy knows. One of the first times I ever hung out with Mazzy was at Willie Nelson at the Fillmore. Mazzy, the archivist, and myself.
Wow.
It's a great time. Only time I've seen Willie. No, I saw him at Stagecoach as well. So I've
I
seen him
remember you got
twice.
in the back of the car. He goes, "Wow, is this an Audi? I've never been in an Audi."
It was a nice car.
And now you have an Audi. It was my little A3
It was a beautiful car.
Yeah.
until my son got it and his ex-girlfriend like totaled it.
Whoa.
She
She
didn't get
okay?
hurt. She's okay. She's okay.
Yeah.
They're not together anymore, so
Yeah, still puts on a hell of a show too. I mean, I saw him in Berkeley at the Greek Theater, and the Drive-By Truckers, who I mentioned earlier, were opening up, and I thought, oh, cool. I had reserved tickets at the Greek, a lot of it's general admission in the back, and I was sitting in my seats, and I was planning on meeting a coworker in the back once Willie started to meet more people, meet some of her friends. And as soon as Willie started and he whipped off his bandana and got down to business doing a set, I'm like, I am not going anywhere. Not leaving this seat. Yeah, absolutely incredible performer. And we're lucky to have him still around, still making music. I mean, the guy puts out more music than I think, I don't know, Robert Pollard these days. It seems like it. He's putting out like 2 albums a year, 3 albums a year. He's like the busiest 90 something that you'll ever see, you know?
Okay, I'm going to cross the Atlantic. I'm going to go to the UK for 1977, and I want to talk about the British debut of The Clash. This came out in 77. The American version, which is a different track list, didn't come out till 79 here. So the album closest that we had, the American version, was a different take. But I got this because I was working in a store, so I got this in 77. Interesting about punk at the time, except for bands a little later, like the Dead Kennedys and stuff, most American punk wasn't quite as overt political as what was happening. Obviously, the Sex Pistols, the Clash, the Damned. I mean, these bands were going through a time of riots. There's a song on here, White Riot, which is the Camden riots, I think. Those of you who are watching in the Britain in the UK will know more of the details of exactly what's on here. I'm So Bored with the USA wasn't actually initially titled that song. Most of the songs, I think, except one reggae song, were written by except for Police and Thieves. That's the reggae song that was a hit the year before this came out as a cover, but were written by Jones and Strummer. Incredible record, a powerful record. Career opportunities, I just love that because there was a lot of unemployment for youth in all the cities, obviously in London and Manchester and Birmingham, all these places. And um, the the year after this was my first trip to England in '78. But I think this is a powerful record. It holds up. Probably my favorite is London Calling, but in terms of closer, purer punk, I mean, obviously, London Calling gets into reggae and dub and a lot of other stuff, which I love, and rock and roll. But this is the powerful record. This image on the back of these police riots in England at the time. London's burning on here. Remote Control, Garageland, 48 Hours. Friggin' great record.
And there's the Henry Rollins line that a lot of people are posting about right now, right? I think he actually, I think people think he said it now, but I think he said it in 2016.
What is it?
After that, he said, "This is what Joe Stramer. This is what Joe Strummer trained us for. The moment that we're in." And he said, "It's go time. This is what punk rock is." And I was like, I sent that to my therapist. I was like, "You got to see this line. Like, just look it up. Joe
Well,
Henry Rollins on Joe Strummer. It's so good."
this is what I said at the opening. Can't remember if it was the opening before you guys jumped on about how, to me, music is politics. And of course, I mean, obviously, there's obvious choices like Revolution, John Lennon, Power to the People, cliche or not, Imagine, Rolling Stone, Street Finding Man, Fortunate Son by Creedence Clearwater, Dylan, Pete Seeger, the folk scene. Um, and there's and not all of it. I mean, how much, what is it? 1% of Beatles songs are political, if that, but even Blackbird was, by Paul McCartney was based on, uh, Angela Davis, and at least inspired by, if not overt. So, these people that say, just, I don't want to hear your fucking politics. Just, that's why I have to do a warning on these kind of videos, because there's plenty of stuff that we all showcase that is not political at all. But I'm not going to shy away from it, especially now.
Politics is personal. It's our lives. I mean, yeah, I don't understand that. And I
And there's
also don't,
sexual politics too, and all kinds of things,
yeah, and I don't understand
environmental.
how like, half these bands, it's like you listen to lyrics. What are you talking about? You claim you're a big fan of some of these bands. It's like listen to lyrics. You're not getting the same thing out of it I'm getting out of. Maybe it has a nice beat, but there's more to it than that.
Right.
You don't listen to Bob Dylan for the beat.
Well, unless you're listening to Tight Connection of the Heart
And
from
let's talk
Empire
connection.
Burlesque. Todd and I had a little back and forth thing about that album because in your recent video, you kind of trashed it. Which
But some people love
It,
that
it
record,
and
right?
I
it and
love it.
Knocked Out Loaded are pretty.
It's too much reverb. Sly and Robbie are on it, so he got the great beats, those vocals. But It's too much reverb. It's a product of 1985, so I
What
will.
about
Like
Saved?
you've been listening to that for the first time or something, didn't you? I remember you holding it up saying, "I'm going to listen to this record." So what are
Me.
your thoughts? Yeah.
I never spun it. Spun it?
Okay,
Is that the
not
right
yet.
tense?
Do
All
you
I
have
right.
it?
took it out. I'll listen to that. I'm gonna listen to Woody Guthrie, Willie Nelson Spirit, and that record today.
Well,
Oh,
it's
you're gonna
changed
take it
metal.
off. It's too 80s reverb, but there's some great stuff on it.
Yeah, I saw Bob Dylan
A good
Saved
song.
in a record store recently. I was like, should I buy this? That's a bad one, right?
Saved is no,
Actually,
I think Saved is better than Empire Burlesque. Yeah.
Really?
Saved is good. The third one of which is the third one? That's
Shot of
the
Love's the best.
Shot of
Shot of Love,
Love?
Shot
Shot
of
of Love is
Love
great.
is.
I like Shot of Love way better than Saved. Shot of Love has Every Grain of Sand on it, which
Well,
is
the
just
best one is the first Christian one. Is
gotta serve somebody. They're
yeah, that one.
ah,
That's
yeah,
the best of the Christian one because it sounds good. It's not.
sounds great.
But I saw that tour, and that's another thing too. Talk about with all a Dylan movie out now and people booing or a certain segment like upset about him going electric. When he went Christian, that first week when he played like 5 shows at the Warfield on Market Street, and I went to the first, the second, and a later one where Mike Bloomfield shows up, and he didn't play one secular, one old song. It was all of and people were booing and walking, not a lot, but there's about 20 people that walked out at the Warfield. And I think this was the time when they were all before they took the seats out of the Warfield because the downstairs, you've been to the Warfield, I think, right, Chris? Yeah.
I have not.
It's open
Saw Nick Cave
downstairs,
there.
but
Yeah.
but it used to be a movie theater. And I think when he played that, I think there were seats everywhere. They hadn't taken the seats out downstairs. Bill Graham was shoot, but I remember that. I thought it was hysterical, but people were pissed. But I
Hmm.
love that record, that first Christian record, especially. So
And what's that period of Dylan? I don't really know, and I've been diving back into it.
well,
So Train Common is the first one. Saved is the
that's the one.
second.
So
Shot
good.
of Love is the
But
third.
the bootleg series that came with the live things, I wish I could have seen shows late in the tour because the band got better. He started doing older songs too, mixed with the Christian, and he got tighter. And all of a sudden, it's kind of like self-portrait. I always like self-portrait, but how people hate self-portrait. And later, it's been revisited with the bootleg series, or what do you call it? Revisited and re-looked at.
Self-portrait.
Yeah. But those live shows from the Christian years are pretty damn great.
Look at these. These are literally on my desk because I want to rewatch all of them.
Oh
That's
yeah.
Rolling Thunder Review. This is my favorite Dylan.
That's so good. Yeah.
This one, the classic, of course.
Oh yeah.
Don't Look Back. I took them out from my DVD case because I want to rewatch all of them.
You
I
should
just
you
don't
should go
like
on
that he.
YouTube and look for Eat the Document too. It was
Oh,
never
really?
actually really released, but you can
Huh.
find versions of it.
Nice.
Don't like that he
It's the
trashes
66
Donovan.
tour, basically.
Trashes Donovan in that Don't Look Back, which I don't like. I love Donovan. So
Yeah. My mom loved Donovan, or loves Donovan still.
I
Is my
probably went out with your mom at one point.
You probably what?
Dated your mom at one point. No,
I mean, she's a cool lady.
kidding.
Is it my
Whose turn is it?
I think it's me. Mazzy just went, right?
I did Clash. It's your turn.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it's your turn.
I'm taking a different angle here. So this is uh in the last 5 to 10 years, I've really gotten into ambient music because it does, as Mazzy said, I talk about mental health stuff a lot. It has done a lot for me listening to Brian Eno, and I've in record stores, I've asked, what's this playing when I hear something that is just sort of relaxes my mind. So I'm just going to show 2 records real quick. Um, First one is not ambient music, but the point is that it's a record that calms me and like makes me feel connected to friends and the world. And that is, I talk about this guy all the time, Bill Fay. I learned about him from Jeff Tweedy, no surprise. Most of the music I learned from is Tweedy. Um, Tweedy or Wilco covered this beautiful song, "Be Not So Fearful," one of the prettiest songs I think ever written. Bill Fay put out, I think, 1 or 2 records in the early 70s, did nothing for 40 years, and then came back and put these records out. This is on Dead Oceans, great, great label. Produced, I thought it said Joshua Henry. Tweedy plays on this. The record's called Life is People. Um, if you don't know Bill Fay, listen to "Be Not So Fearful." Tremendous song, one of my favorite songs by anyone. But on this record, there's a song called "There Is a Valley," "This World," "Be at Peace with Yourself." I mean, it's just Bill Fay is such a gift. He hasn't put out a record in a few years, but he literally had like 3 or 4 decades of nothing. Came back, put out a bunch of records, um, and he's tremendous. And last, sort of tied to this, more on the ambient front, is a record that I got yesterday in the mail. And I read about this. I don't remember where I read about it. Like most of us, we read about music all the time, right? A million different Mojo, all these different magazines and sites. But it's an artist named Satoshi Ashikawa. The record is called Wave Notation 2 Still Way. Read about it that it was hugely influential early Japanese ambient record. It came out in 1982. I played it last night after, Friday night, first week of what we're all going through. And I was like, I don't want like the Clash, or I don't want you know, something to rile me up. I want to chill out. And I put this record on, and it is absolutely beautiful. I made it. I did listen to the first side, and then phone call came in, so I'm gonna listen to the second side today. I went on to Wikipedia because, of course, I'm like, who is this guy? I got to learn more about him. He apparently died when he was 30 years old before this even came out.
Oh,
It
wow.
was either before it came out or right after it came out. Um, he was promoting Brian. He owned a record store slash bookstore, I believe. Again, I read this all last night at like 11 p.m. So, um, and he had brought all of Brian Eno's records like into the bookstore. So people in Japan were sort of discovering, or at least people where he lived were discovering ambient music. So he made this record, and that was it. One record, and then I think he was 30 years old, died in a car accident. So all of this I learned yesterday. Heard the music for the first time yesterday. Heard his story. Heard about the Brian Eno connection. About ambient music in Japan. Again, some of the stuff I just shared may not be accurate because I've read it once. Um, but ambient music, I don't know if you guys are into it, but it
Absolutely.
does so much for my mental health. I'll go for walks and listen to, what is it, atmosphere? What's the Brian Eno? Atmospheres and atmosphere. I can't remember it. Um, and it just puts you in a different place, right?
Well, the ambient music series, the
And music for airports.
airports.
Yeah.
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 Um,
I would love to get a list of your favorites, Chris, or just a playlist or whatever you have.
yeah, yeah.
I tend to, I mean, I do a lot of writing and I can't listen to things that have lyrics to them. And I sometimes in the morning I would just put on music for airports and it just worked. It
You
cleared
should
Yeah.
my
put
head.
on
I could focus.
Todd. Amanda has the Balmorhea albums and the Michael Muller albums. The guy from L.A. used to be in Austin. That they're very minimal Deutsche Grammophon and stuff. And I think
Oh yeah.
some of that stuff would be very kind of chill too.
Okay.
So anything by Michael Muller, Balmorhea, that kind of stuff. I mean, amongst there's a lot of others too. And
Yeah.
I
Cool.
know a little bit. Um, yeah.
Yeah, but
Sleep.
I've been on a huge, just lately, a big Japan kick. And I think I'm going to go there in April or May. I've been there twice and I want to go back to Kyoto. I've been to Kyoto, but just sort of the whole minimalist, the architecture in
I would
Japan
love
is
to go
just,
there. Yeah.
yeah, it's just, I love the people there. One of my good friends was actually over this past Sunday. He lives in Tokyo. I met him at a previous job. He and I were just talking about Japan, and I've always been fascinated with that country. And I know Jim O'Rourke lives there now. I don't know if he still
Really?
does, but he relocated there like after Yankee Hotel Foxtrot, I think. And
But you have to look up, I don't know if you watch his channel, Tokyo Record Style. He's a VCer and
I
he's like
have, I think.
super engaging guy, super friendly. I think he
Brian.
welcomes anybody that comes to Tokyo to like
Huh.
hang
He'll
with him
show
or
you Brian.
up
His
with
name
him.
is Brian. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, Brian. Yeah.
I will subscribe today.
Yeah.
All right,
All
Todd.
right, you're up, Todd.
All right, I'm gonna do something a little different here. Um, I'm gonna show this blank album that has nothing on it.
I thought
And
it was Ode to Joy.
Nope, not Ode to Joy.
And it's not the Beatles. It might be a test pressing, you know?
No, not everything has to tie back to the Beatles, Matthew.
Well, but what? I mean, look at, come on.
I'm showing
Actually,
a
everything
blank.
does tie back to the Beatles, okay?
I mean, the ring wear is just a coincidence, so Um, I'm showing a blank album because I really believe that we need to create our own art now too. I think, there is an art. I'm not, absolutely, and we are creating art when we put these videos together. I really do believe that. But for viewers, anybody else, ourselves, I think it's a time to really create your own art as well, not just rely on the art of other people to sustain you, but do your own thing, whether it's writing, whether it's drawing, whether it's songwriting, painting, whatever, pulling out an acoustic guitar, teaching yourself how to play guitar. I think these things are really important right now. And I think, they also bring community. Yeah, they can be solitary endeavors, but they can also be something you do with your friends. And I feel like creating new worlds right now, better worlds that you immerse yourself in, worlds that you forget about time for a little while, and or time goes by incredibly fast. You get in the zone with something. I feel like that's really, really important right now. So I just
We
want to,
we talked about that when I was up in Seattle. I think
yeah.
we're going to get a lot of good, hopefully, records, books, movies out of this period. I think it's going to swing back pretty strong right now, and we're going to get hopefully, some great art. I think it's coming.
The new folk revival, but not necessarily acoustic folk or Americana in a certain way,
Yeah.
whatever the genre is. But I think protest music. I mean, it all comes down to that. There hasn't been a lot of
But
protest
just
music.
music or just escapism too.
Well,
I don't know.
yeah.
For me, I have a feeling that a lot of the music that might come out or the music that people create might be just pure escapism because it's like in some ways you can't even all the obvious things have been written. It's like I don't even know what to say about half of what's going on right now. I don't know, it'd be interesting.
Adrienne Lenker. I can't wait to see what she does
The
during
Yeah.
next Big
Olympics.
Thief record's going to be amazing. Those,
You
those
know,
live tracks they're previewing are
I'm the
exceptional.
only one of the three of us that has a son. My son's 34, and I'm at a good old age now, but I'm a young good old. I'm at a young at heart, and I don't want to leave this country the way it is now. I mean, and I want to be a little part of it. I'm not going to just sit around and, you know, cash my Social Security checks and just listen to records. I do that, but I have to speak up when, like, that's why this concept here, and it's not overtly, I think we did a good balance personally. Um, but I want this country to be better, and I'm surprised. I don't think uh, the leaders that people have chosen are better for a lot of reasons, and the obvious reasons there. So that's how I do. I just want to. There's one song I want to close out with for me, and if you have something else, because I've been playing this song. 1982, there was a movie directed by Tony Richardson, which is a British director, but it was with Jack Nicholson, and it again timely, pretty much of what I started with or talked about early on, and it's called "The Border" here by Ry Cooder. Ry Cooder, but the title song, or which is the second song on here, is written by Ry Cooder, John Hyatt, and Jim Dickinson. And it's called Across the Borderline, and it's with them. And the lead vocal is Freddie Fender and Sam Samudio, which is Sam the Sham and the Pharaohs out of the 60s, if you remember Little Red Riding Hood and Wooly Bully, those songs. But this is a beautiful soundtrack. I'm a big fan of Rycooder's soundtrack. There's also, that's what I mentioned to you before. Willie Nelson did an amazing cover of Across the Borderline, and one of my favorites that came out like right, I guess in 2019 is Gabby Moreno. It's on Nonsuch Records. She's a Guatemalan singer, and it's a weird album because it's a cover of that song, uh, produced and orchestrated by Van Dyke Parks, who worked with the Beach Boys and all these people. It's really kind of a weird, obtuse orchestration thing. Jackson Brown comes in and sings a harmony with her halfway through, and there's orchestration, a lot of strings, and Ry Cooder does a great slide solo in it. And I reposted it recently on YouTube. Gabby Moreno, Moreno, Across the Borderline. Listen to that version of that. it's so beautiful. And from by her singing it at that time, what was happening back then, uh, you know, before Biden was in office. Um, anyway, so that song touches me. I think I've been more overtly political about my showcases today, because, you know, I feel I have to. That's just for me.
So this is sort of the speed round to close it out. One
Yeah,
more from each of
yeah,
us.
sure.
And I would love a Ry Cooder playlist. We talked, we had a thread recently where we were talking about, despite how many records we all have and how much music we listen to, whether it's streaming, CD, vinyl, going to shows, watching documentaries, that for all of us, there's still so much music to be explored, which is just unreal, right? I was around New Year's, I was thinking about that, and I was just thinking of bands that like XTC or X. For some reason, X's came into my head, and I was like, I have apples. Was it something in oranges? The XTC record,
Yeah.
like, but I'm like, there are so many. There's like old folk and country artists that I've never had gotten. There's just I'm speaking the obvious, but
Beautiful
like
thing about
hip
recorded
hop and
music,
soul,
right?
yeah,
Yeah.
it's just it never
Yeah.
ends.
Yeah.
So real quick, uh, I mean, when I think of what's going on right now, the first song I always go to is "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall." I mean, that's uh, one. I think it's a top five song of all time for me. If you haven't seen it, and I imagine that you two may have, Patti Smith when she covers "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall," and I think she forgets the lyrics, and it's in like this really big setting. It's like I think it was when he won the Nobel Peace Prize. Did Dylan win the Nobel Peace Prize?
Yes. Yes.
Yep.
I think it was when he won, and she's singing "A Hard Rain's Gonna Fall," and you can see that she's getting nervous. And I think she stops and sort of forgets the lyrics, and then like the crowd or the people in there, like in Kurt, it's one of the sweetest videos ever.
Oh wow.
Like
I'd like to see that.
Patti Smith, you have to love her. Like everybody
Uh,
loves Patti Smith, right? But watch that video. You start to feel for her. You're like, oh my God, and like she kind of comes back to it, and it's just this wonderful like moment of humanity. Last thing I was gonna show is this Steve Earle record. I Feel All Right. Uh,
mm.
Not talked about a lot. I never hear people talk about this record on the vinyl community. It's a tremendous record. When he got out of jail, he was in jail for what, 3 years, I think.
I think so. Yeah. And then
And
he did
he put out Train to Comin', I Feel All Right, and El Corazon. And
Warzone.
those three records, I think, are the best of Steve Earle. Most people will
I
say
agree.
Guitar Town and Exit Zero. Uh, I saw Steve Earle during that period, mid to late 90s. Unbelievable. And I feel all right. Whenever I'm feeling sort of down and I need something to just get me, I feel all right because it was like him exploding out of prison. It was like
Yeah.
this
Yeah.
crazy. Lucinda Williams plays on it.
I forgot about that one. I've been listening to El Corazon, or I shouldn't say I've been
El
listening. I
Corazon's
listened to it.
great.
That's
Yeah.
one that got me. And I listened to it probably 6 months ago and really
With
liked it.
that Fort Worth Blues about Towns Van Zandt, the last song, that beautiful
Yeah.
opens with
There'll be no
Christmas
more
in Washington.
FDRs. Like,
Yeah,
yeah.
that period for him, like that 4 or 5 year period, was just
Yeah.
unreal. That's all I got.
Do you have anything else,
Well,
Todd?
I did listen to one political song kind of loud this morning as we're getting ready for this. This is a Super Chunks record, What a Time to Be Alive. What a time to be alive.
Another band that I have said I need to dive into this band.
You know,
I don't know that record.
this album might be a good place to start, honestly. Like a lot of bands, you think like, oh, their later stuff's not that great. I know like big Superchunk fans who still love this record.
Hmm.
It's about now, really. But I'm gonna see if I can read these lyrics, just a little bit of them here. There's a crooked line that runs through through every crease in this map, and you want to take us all the way back to see the rot and no disguise. Oh, what a time to be alive. The scum, the shame, the fucking lies. Oh, what a time to be alive. We can't pretend to be surprised. What a time to be alive. The seasons change and some survive. Oh, what a time to be alive. It's just like this great little like punk song. And the whole album's kind of like that. This is probably the most direct, but there's a song in here called Reagan Youth and a few others that definitely kind of have that same energy. And it's very now.
And that's a recent record.
Yeah, I think it's probably like 2021-ish.
What do you think is their best record? Like, where should I?
2018.
Where
You
should I
know,
start?
I'm like you. They're a band I have not explored a ton. No
It's
pockets of
It's the Merge Records. The two
Merge
folks from
Record.
Merge
Those
Records.
they own it.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah. And it's such a great label. I think it's testament to the people that are in this band. But
Yeah.
yeah, I'm the wrong person to ask about that.
Huh.
The dark stuff. You ever watch his channel? He's a huge Superchunk
There
fan.
will be people in the comments that will suggest to
Yeah,
watch,
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
which
I
is
saw
great
it.
about
Foolish.
comments.
Foolish would probably come up. That's a good one from like '94, I think.
I've heard of that one. Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, well, I want to thank you. There are links below to these two channels, three channels. We miss John Digital Gramophone. He again got called away or pulled away or he's away, and we miss him because he was supposed to be a part of this initial thing of the resistance. I hope to do with you all more of these over the next, maybe we do one a month or something, or we'll see how it goes. I think it's fun, and they won't all be political, but it's still the resistance, and it's the music we love. And but go to their channels because I mean, obviously, Todd and Chris, I'm a fan of, and they make great content. What's great about them here, I'm going to just say this because this is what the kind of videos I like. They make a lot of their videos personal, and they bring their lives and their experiences and when this music they were attracted to these artists. I think that's a great part of it than just saying I went to the store and I bought this record. And I'm not against all that, but and I probably sound like people are going to say it's a bunch of bullshit, you're being snooty Mazzy, but there's a reason why we're showing these records. And I think context, I've found that most people like that, like the personal touch of that. So thank you both. Hang on here when I sign out, but thank
Thanks
you.
for having us.
Thanks, Chris.
Thank you. Yeah, yeah. This is fun.
Love you guys.
Take care.